alcohol, drug abuse, arrests, all things that can be associated with one NFL team during the 1990s. And no, I'm not talking about the Dallas Cowboys. In fact, I am talking about my Carolina Panthers. Those that are old enough to remember would tell you that the first 4 first-round picks selected by the second youngest expansion team in the NFL, in fact, did not work out in any way, shape, or form. But what many people are not aware of are just how bad things were with those players, not only with their career, but with their things behind the scenes as well. So in this video, I am going to give you all the retrospective look and a peek behind the curtain as to just how bad things were with these first 4 first-round picks selected by the Carolina Panthers. And we're going to get into that right after this.
I'm from the foe, you dig?
In 1995, the Carolina Panthers were the newest expansion team in the NFL, and they were looking to land the face of their franchise with their first ever draft pick. Excitement had been building in the Carolinas for a half a decade since the announcement of a professional football team coming was made. After an offseason full of vetting, then owner Jerry Richardson, GM Bill Polian, and head coach Dom Capers decided to draft the 6'4", 247-pound All-American quarterback from Penn State, Kerry Collins. Kerry Collins was drafted 5th overall in the 1995 NFL Draft and would only spend 3 full seasons with the Carolina Panthers before being traded in the early portion of the 1998 season. During his time in Carolina, Collins threw for 8,306 yards while amassing 47 touchdowns and 54 interceptions. His best year was his second year in the league when he led the Carolina Panthers to the NFC Championship game following a 9-7 season and an improbable upset over the defending champion Dallas Cowboys. Collins was a Pro Bowler that year, and he looked to be one of the most promising young players in the NFL. That feeling of promise did not last long, as the very next year in 1997, Collins would lead the league in interceptions and the Panthers would miss the playoffs altogether. Before the 1997 season even began, local media started to report that Collins had been involved in a string of off-field incidents involving partying and drinking. The most infamous of these off-field transgressions took place at a team-hosted event where a clearly inebriated Kerry Collins walked over to a young second-year wide receiver, Muhsin Muhammad, and greeted him by calling him a racial slur. Years later, when asked about the incident, Collins said, quote, "In my polluted mind, I felt in some sort of way it would bring forth some sense of camaraderie. That incident, unfortunately, gave me a tag I don't believe that I am about at all," close quote. He never revealed what he said to Moose, but if I had to guess, I'm pretty sure it was in the vein of, "What's up, my," insert word there. Just days after this, Collins had his jaw broken in a preseason game after taking a vicious hit from a Broncos linebacker. If anything, that hit just served as an analogy for how the rest of the season to come would in fact go. After a miserable 1997, Collins would take an even bigger psychological blow when he learned that the Carolina Panthers would not be picking up an option that would have extended him through 2001 ahead of the 1998 season. That also meaning that he will become an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season. After starting 0-4, a battered and bruised Kerry Collins walked into head coach Dom Capers' office and told him that his head and heart were no longer in the game. Also, that he needed to sit for a few weeks until he could shake back. Dom Capers had a completely different interpretation. He took this as Collins openly admitting to quitting on his team, and he was not alone in that thinking. In the 90s, the focus on the mental health of athletes in sports was not as common as it is today. Rather than being seen as legitimate issues of mental health were usually attributed to simply being weak, and that's how many in the league saw Collins. After attempts to trade Collins prior to the 1998 trade deadline were unsuccessful, Carolina elected to wash their hands altogether and just waive Collins after 7 games. Later that season, the New Orleans Saints would be the lone team to attempt to claim Collins off waivers, in the end only costing them $100 total dollars to do so. In week 9 of that season, the still winless Carolina Panthers would face off against the New Orleans Saints. After booing mercilessly, the Carolina Panthers beat Collins and the Saints just to embarrass him one last time and put a lasting stain on his career forever. After leaving Carolina, Collins would go on to spend 13 more seasons in the NFL, throwing for nearly 41,000 passing yards, which places him 20th on the all-time list. He played in 1 additional Pro Bowl, as well as he made the playoffs 3 more times, and thus would end the story of Kerry Collins, the first quarterback drafted by the Carolina Panthers. In a run-heavy 1990s NFL, teams were always looking to find the best and most fresh legs to run behind their offensive lines. With players like Barry Sanders and Emmitt Smith being regarded as some of the most valuable in the league, it was the thinking of the Carolina Panthers that they now needed to go out and get their own guy since they had their quarterback in place. There were 2 running back prospects that went in the first round of that year's draft. They played at rival schools being Michigan and Ohio State. In 1996, the Carolina Panthers selected running back Tim Biakobatuka, 8th overall from the University of Michigan. In his rookie season, Biakobatuka would only play in 4 games before suffering a torn ACL and missing the remainder of the season. This would soon prove to be the story of Biakobatuka's career. After seeing the team that drafted him to be their main back nearly go to the Super Bowl without him, Biakobatuka was more motivated than ever to return to the field. In the following years, turf toe and reoccurring ankle sprains would happen just about every year. That led to Biakobatuka never playing more than 12 games in a season. In 6 years in the NFL, Biakobatuka would only appear in 50 of a possible 96 games. Tim also amassed 3,319 all-purpose yards and 17 touchdowns. In Week 5 of the 2001 NFL season, Biakobatuka suffered a tragic foot injury that forced him off the field and to the hospital immediately. In a 2017 interview with CarolinaPanthers.com, Biakobatuka was asked about his injury and he said, quote, "Apparently, I'm the only guy who has ever had that injury in the history of the NFL. My foot just got stuck and never came back up off the turf when I was being twisted. It wasn't really a break, but it was dislocated and all of my ligaments in my foot were torn. So the bones were all over the place like a puzzle. That was in Washington too." Close quote. After convincing himself that that was not the end of his career, Tim rehabbed himself back to health in an effort to get back into the league. When the time finally came, he got a workout from the Vikings, Buccaneers, and the Texans, but each and every time their team doctors failed him due to their unfamiliarity with his unprecedented injury. That would signal the end of Biakobatuka's career altogether. Beyond his constant injuries, many Panthers fans still hold on to the fact that he was selected 6 spots ahead of what was perceived to be the second best running back in that draft class. That running back went on to win the 1996 Offensive Rookie of the Year and is expected to one day be a member of the NFL Hall of Fame. His name is Eddie George. Biakobatuka is currently the owner of 2 Bojangles franchises in North Carolina, and that so would end the story of the second overall first-round pick selected by the Carolina Panthers. So, in 1995, you get your quarterback. Then you get your running back in 1996. So the logical thing to do would be to grab a receiver next, right? That was the thinking of the Carolina Panthers brass when they selected the 5'11 All-American wide receiver Rae Carruth, 27th overall from Colorado in the 1997 NFL Draft. Carruth would go on to have a respectable rookie year with 44 catches for 545 yards and 4 touchdowns. To begin his sophomore campaign in 1998, Carruth suffered a broken right foot in the season opener and would miss the entire season because of the injury. After returning from injury, Carruth planned on reestablishing himself as a promising young receiver in the NFL, but after his first 6 games back, it was quickly apparent that that would never, ever happen. In November of 1999, Carruth fled North Carolina under suspicion of murder. His then-girlfriend, Cherika Adams, who was 8 months pregnant with his child at the time, called 911 and reported that she had been shot 4 times by a known assailant of Carruth, and Carruth was involved in the attack. She alleged that Carruth used his car to blockade her in, while his associate drove up and fired several shots into her vehicle. After making it to the hospital, Adams fell into a coma and the doctor had to deliver the baby via a C-section. During this time, Carruth turned himself in and posted a $3 million bail under the condition that he would turn himself in if either Adams or the baby died. Adams died on December 14, 1999, but the child survived. Sadly, the baby was born with permanent brain damage and also cerebral palsy due to being without oxygen for over an hour due to his mother's condition. After hearing this news, Carruth attempted to go on the run again, but he was captured the very next day after being found in West Tennessee hiding in the trunk of a car outside of a motel. Carruth was found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, shooting into an occupied vehicle, and using an instrument to destroy an unborn child. He was not found guilty of first-degree murder, sparing him of possible execution. Carruth was sentenced to 18 to 24 years in prison. Carruth was released from prison on October 22, 2018 after serving 18 years of that sentence. Carruth's story has been chronicled on several crime shows as well as documentaries. Carruth has since made headlines again since being released from prison, stating publicly that he would like to have a relationship with the child that he once tried to have killed. Though this nearly 30-year-old story is still being written, the story of Rae Carruth as a Carolina Panther ended before the turn of the millennia. And with that being said, that so would end the story of Rae Carruth, the 3rd first-round pick ever selected by the Carolina Panthers. After going heavy on the offensive side of the ball with their first 3 picks, the Carolina Panthers thought it was time to draft a young weapon for their defensive coordinator Vic Fangio. Following a less than stellar 1997 season where they finished 7-9, the Carolina Panthers had the 14th overall pick in the 1998 NFL Draft, where they selected Jason Peter, the 6'4", 295-pound defensive end from Nebraska. Peter was coming into the NFL as a 3-time national champion, including a win over a Peyton Manning-led Tennessee Volunteers. His performance in college led many to believe that he was sure to be a top 10 pick in that year's draft, but after slipping, it did nothing but motivate Peter, supposedly. Issues would arise almost immediately after the selection was made. Before his rookie year even began, Peter barely attended training camp due to an ongoing negotiation over his contract. The contract disputes would not be settled until 5 days before the start of the regular season. Due to his lack of preparation, Peter had a very subpar rookie year. His totals through 14 games and 11 starts were 33 tackles and 1 sack. This is not what was expected of a 4-year college player with as much experience as Peter. In December of 1998, Peter would be sidelined with his first of soon to be a chronically reoccurring neck problem that would trouble him throughout his career. He would only play in 38 of a possible 64 games in his career. As the injuries would continue to eat away at Peter and his reputation with Panthers fans, Peter developed a dependency on painkillers that would soon become an addiction. Peter learned just how much people were willing to risk to have a piece of the NFL. He would bribe doctors with memorabilia in exchange for Oxycontin, Vicodin, Xanax, and a myriad of other things. By the 2001 season, Peter was little more than an afterthought in the Panthers' pass rush rotation. Panthers great Mike Rucker was drafted a year after Peter in the 2nd round, and his greatness was washing away whatever hopes Panthers fans still had for Peter. After sustaining another season-ending injury midway through his 4th campaign, he was approached by head coach George Seifert and told it was time to hang up the jersey for good. At the completion of that year, Peter's contract expired, no other teams reached out, and that signaled the end of his short 4-year career. In an interview post-career, Peter would admit that during his playing days, he was taking up to 60 Vicodin a day, as opposed to the 1 or 2 that was recommended by doctors. After his playing days were over, Peter went on to co-host several talk sports radio shows and publish a book. Although Peter may have gotten to a place where he was able to do well after the NFL, that was not easy for him, as he did have to hit rock bottom before he was able to get either of those gigs. Just because Peter was no longer playing football on Sundays, that did not mean that the lasting impacts of the NFL on his body would just miraculously go away. Peter still had a dependency on painkillers, but now, because he had so much free time and extra money to spend, he needed something a little more strong that would get the party started a little bit quicker. Peter became a heavy cocaine user and spent most of his free time partying and club hopping. In an excerpt from his book, Peter would say, quote, "The next morning, when I'd wake up in a menage of coke-smeared mirrors and nude snoring strippers, I would truly know the meaning of the word misery." Close quote. Peter would eventually get the help necessary to get himself out of this drug-induced funk and get his life back on track post-NFL. But as he would easily tell you today without any hesitation, it was not easy. And that will bring us to the end of the video. What did you all think about this video? What do you all think about these 4 pickups? How bad it went, how ugly it got, how dirty the things behind the scenes got? You all leave your comments down below. Also, my normal followers, how do you feel about this style of video? This is my first time diving into this type of storytelling rather than just giving my opinion, just giving some actual background and information when it comes to my Carolina Panthers. So my loyalists and any new followers as well, how do you feel about this style of video? Please be sure to leave your commentary down below. And with that being said, man, I'm not going to take any more of your time. I appreciate you if you have made it this far in the video, man. I am Jamario Rashad. This is the way I see it. Like and subscribe to the channel, and I'm out. Peace.